How do you measure progress when you're learning to use your voice more effectively? It's surprisingly difficult to measure progress in voice work sometimes for various reasons. So today I'm going to tell you I'm going to tell you a story about a difficulty in measuring progress or feeling progress. Two, I'm going to give you two types of progress that you see in voice and why it's got to do with Zen meditation. Three reasons that there is that is difficult to measure progress or feel progress when you're doing voice work. And four, I'm going to give you one technique that I teach to people and I use in order to be able to start to recognize how much progress you're making when you're learning to use your voice effectively. If you don't know me, I'm Alex. I'm a voice coach. I'm a clown. And this is a video about voice. If you like videos about voice, subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, do the other things, ring a bell. Just go outside, ring a bell in the street. Hello. That's how it works. Anyway, number one, I'm going to tell you a story. So why would I tell you it? I should just jump into it, shouldn't I? Now I've said that, but I'm not editing these videos, so that's what you're getting. Anyway, yesterday I went to this event. Let's call it. It was like a big event. It was kind of like a club type environment though. So there was like, there was like lots of music, and there were lots of people talking and things. And my social abilities totally tanked. And this is something that has happened all my life. And now that I know that I'm AuDHD, so ADHD with autistic traits, I know that it's because it's partly various reasons, but like partly because of being overstimulated by sound. So when there's like a really loud environment, it feels like being told to do like a really complex exam while you're being waterboarded. It's like you can hold a conversation, but it's really, really tough. And like my social ability is really low. And so coming away from this event yesterday, my little inner critic was going, "Oh, look, see, you've not made any progress as a human being. Just like when you were a teenager and you went into clubs, and then you just, you dance, but then you wouldn't talk to people, and then you'd go away, and you've not made any progress at all." Like, thank you, inner critic. But it feels like that. It feels like, oh God, here I am, 37 years old. I can't even still can't like probably hold conversations in those sort of environments. But it's not true. There is progress there. I have to recognise that. I've been doing that work today to remind myself that I'm not the same as when I was as a teenager. I now know that that's a dynamic. I kind of took myself away from the noise as much as I could. It was a really noisy environment, and I stopped and I meditated, and I kind of reduced the overwhelm in my sensory system a few times, and I also set myself an alarm every so often. And after 3 alarms went off, I was like, okay, this is too much. I'm going to leave. So I'd shown up, and I was doing self-care. And although this idea of progress, this thing of like, okay, I've got this idea, this is what it's going to look like when I make progress, which is what can often happen when we're trying to like improve ourselves as performers, for example. I had this idea of like, okay, I'm going to be a lot better at conversations. In reality, the progress that I made was making sure that I didn't, like today, I'm able to make a video, whereas 2 years ago, I would have been so dead today. I'm tired, but like I would have been so dead today that I wouldn't have been able to do anything, and I would have been destroyed for several days. So actually, the progress has been in like keeping self-care, even though I was still not very good at doing conversations in that environment. So that is that story. That is what progress can look like. It does not feel like progress sometimes. It feels messy, and it feels like we're not doing well. But actually, we can be making massive strides. And this is certainly true with voice work. So number two, what are the two different types of progress that I see in people when we're learning to use their voice better? And it is a little bit like in Zen meditation, these two types of progress. One, in the world of Zen meditation, or any other type of meditation, there are sort of two paths to enlightenment, apparently. And one of them is the gradual path. So, you maybe sit and do a meditation every day, or you just do some regular meditation, and you just put in the work, and then one day you might be enlightened. This is the idea. And then there is just sudden enlightenment. There's a lot of Zen stories about someone just gets hit by a stick or something, and suddenly they become enlightened. It's sudden enlightenment. And the kind of one of the ways of looking at this is like the more gradual work you put in, like the more you sit in meditation in that case, the more likely you are to have a sudden enlightenment. And this is exactly what I see with voice work. So sometimes, we would be doing like voice work with people, working on exercises, getting them to look at their posture and their breathing and all this sort of stuff, and they won't feel progress, and they won't feel progress, and I'll notice progress, but they won't feel it. And then one day there will just be a sudden, like, light bulb, I just got this, I didn't realize this, and now I get it. And you can't, like, I can't engineer that as a teacher, as the, like, this is where this person will have a light bulb moment. And sometimes you don't even get to see it. Sometimes it's years later when if you've got a good, good teacher. One of my teachers, is notorious. My clown teacher was like notorious for people like decades later suddenly going, "This is exactly what that teacher told me 10 years ago." So it's like, so we can't say when we're going to have these sort of life-changing ideas about voice. But the more work we put in, the more kind of gradual progress that we make, the more we'll have these little spikes of like going, now I understand. So that's the kind of two types of progress that you see with voice. 3, why is it hard? So there are 3 reasons why it's difficult to notice progress in the voice. And one of them is there's a kind of lack of clear milestones with voice work. So let's say, use the example of weight. So if you're doing weightlifting, for example, and you go in one day and you can lift up 10 kilos in one exercise, and then the next week you can lift up 12 kilos or 11 kilos or something. You can sort of see this number going up. And in voice, it's not like that. I mean, it can be, but it usually isn't. So maybe like the only example, or a good example of why when that does show up, is in like singing. So maybe you're trying, if you're doing singing teaching, and you're trying to reach a particular note, and you can't reach that note, and you can't reach that note, and then one day you can reach that note. Then you've got like a clear, measurable thing of like, oh, now I can reach that note. In speaking, it's less obvious. You can change loads of things, and you can be improving loads of things about your voice, but you're still, like, it's not so clear that change is made. And the technique I'm going to give you in a second kind of counteracts for that. The second reason it's difficult to measure progress in voice is, or to feel progress, is because how your voice sounds to you is different from other people. So over the course of a workshop, for example, you could be doing stuff with your voice, and suddenly the people in the audience can tell that you're using your voice in a different way. And we get them to reflect back, what do we see there, or whatever. But the person on stage sometimes doesn't notice yet, because part of voice work, a lot of voice work, is learning to notice when your voice is being used in a particular way, and notice what's happening with your voice. So then, so it can take sometimes those light bulb moments that I'm talking about. They can happen when you notice something that you've already achieved. So this is something that I have a friend who was doing some voice work, and then suddenly just noticed one day having a conversation that her voice was totally different. And it was a normal conversation she had in the gym with the person at the reception. And just because she was been thinking about her voice, she noticed her voice had changed. But it was that was the light bulb moment. But the work had already been done by then. She'd already made that change, but it just took that moment to realize it and everything to click into place. So that's the second reason. It sounds different to you in your head. And 3, there are so many things about the voice. This is why it's so difficult to measure progress sometimes, is because you're changing so many different things. You're changing your posture, you're changing your breathing, you're changing your kind of identity sometimes, or your feelings around your own voice, your personalities, your hang-ups, or uncertainties about yourself. There's like so many factors that go into what you're changing with voice, that sometimes it can be difficult to notice that you're kind of, you're increasing this and this and this and this and this, because there's no sort of one overall thing. To the final point of this video, how can you make progress? Or rather, how can you recognize the progress that you're undoubtedly already doing if you're engaging in voice work? And this is something I do in the Voice Lab program that I have, and it's a thing that I use myself, and it's to go out and have little experiments. So in Voice Lab, we'll do it like every week of the course. You know, every person will set a different experiment because every person has got a different voice. And in the Voice Lab, you kind of go out and you go, okay, this is my experiment for this week. This is what I'm going to focus on. I'm going to focus on this one thing about the voice. And then the next week you come back and you go, okay, what happened there, or what was the outcome? And because you're then reducing it to just one thing of like, okay, when I turn up in this situation at work or with this person, where I usually struggle with my voice, what's happening to my posture, for example. So like one thing that you'll track, and over the course of the week you'll notice it, and it will come out in different ways as well. You'll start to see that happen. Like you'll start to see your posture happening in more than just that one situation. But by sort of really honing it down and going, okay, when am I, like, what's happening with this part of my voice in this way, then you can start to actually measure this kind of small progress that actually you're making all the time when you're engaging in voice work. So there you go. That was 4 steps, a story, 2 types of progress that you can get: gradual and instantaneous, light bulb moments, 3 reasons that it's difficult to measure or feel progress, and then that technique, have little experiments to be able to tell what progress you're making. That was a lot of information, but hopefully it was useful. If you're interested in voice stuff, please sign up. Yeah, you can sign up. Do whatever you want. No, you can subscribe to the channel. You can hit the bell icon, hit the like. You can sign up to the wait list for Voice Lab whenever that runs next, which is it's down in the in the description. Where's the description? I don't know. Or you can follow me on social media. Do whatever you want. That is all. I'm going to rest it now. Good evening.